Good morning, everyone. It is March 9th, 9 a.m. in good old Texas. Topic of today, what lights you up? Draw more of that. It's really that simple. And create more of what you want to see in the world. So the past few days, well, really the past few years, but I just love drawing this central figure. It's a kind of a meditation practice for me as well, to be able to draw a figure, kind of get centered. You know, in the beginning, it was a lot of study, right? And studying how the skull looked, and then the face and the muscles and all the parts, right? But when you do something enough, repetition, it sounds boring, right? But how are you going to get good at anything? So just to be able to be comfortable with boredom that's something I've heard from a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs, especially the people over at school.com, school with a K. And I've heard enough of them say, just, you got to be comfortable with boredom. You got to be okay with being boring. And I'm not saying this is boring. Like, this for me is super exciting because I've gotten so damn good at it from doing it so much that I can talk about it. I can talk to you guys. I can think about other things in life. It becomes this meditation for me. But again, even getting up to this point, okay, I'm thinking of the basic head shape, where the eyes are going to be, where the nose is going to be, where the mouth is going to be. It's always the same every single time. And that is kind of this idea of being okay with the mundane, as it were. Because sometimes people hear, oh, how much you have to do something to get good at it. And it just takes a lot of time. But what the hell else are you going to do with your time? You really got to think about that. So again, the theme, what lights you up? Draw more of that. Create more of that. If you like monsters, draw more monsters. If you like Hello Kitty, you draw more Hello Kitty. I used to love Hello Kitty. You can make a career drawing Hello Kitty, like custom art. You can't really like sell on a mass scale. That gets into the whole thing about copywritten art. Obviously, imagine if you created something and then someone else is out there recreating it and making money off of it, and you're not. Like, that would suck, right? A lot of people do that. There are ways around that. One is the legal way. The other is the illegal way. The legal way is you create a licensing deal with the company. Now, that can be done through other companies. When I was working at Fox, working on all Fox properties, but primarily The Simpsons in the beginning, I ended up working on all the properties, such as Aliens and Planet of the Apes and Avatar and all this stuff, but I was hired because of my Simpsons expertise. And we would have licensees come in pretty much every day, all week, people from around the world, around the country that make products, and they would license out the Simpsons characters. And they would make products, they would get their cut of the sales, Fox would get our cut, and that's how it worked. That's how licensing works. You can do that with, well, you know, again, that's the legal way. So you got to go through the legal processes of doing that. The illegal way is just, you just fucking do it and sell it until they tell you to stop. I know many artists go that route. Let's say, okay, you guys heard of Comic-Con, right? Or comic conventions or whatever. You have artists there selling work at tables, and it's all copywritten shit. Not all, most of it. And you're thinking, how the hell are they getting away with this? So one thing that I've heard many times over the years is that you could sell upwards of like $10,000 of copywritten art. They're not going to come after you per se. It really depends on what you're doing. Like if you're doing a bunch of Marvel characters, they don't give a fuck. $10,000. I don't even know how they're going to know that you're making $10,000, but if you're just selling drawings of, you know, Wolverine and Thor and whatever, you know, chances are you probably aren't even making 10 grand, but maybe you are. And let's say they find out, they're not going to come after you because it's not even worth it for them to come after you, meaning to come after and sue you, because it costs one of their lawyers $10,000 an hour. It's not worth it. If you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars off of copywritten material, well, the first thing that they do is send you a cease and desist letter. So they give you a warning. They're like, stop it, or we will sue the shit out of you. That's kind of generally how it happens. But let's say, you know, custom commissions, one-of-a-kind commissions, tattoo art. You see people walking around with, you know, Batman and fucking all the characters on them. You can get away with it, is what I'm saying. And when they tell you to stop, well, that's going to be up to you. You can be a rebel and challenge the system, or then you can then go the legal way. So I'm not telling you guys to do anything illegal. I'm just saying what you can do. And then, of course, the other side of all of this is you just create your own original art and you sell that. Now, selling art is an art in and of itself. I'm always recommending to artists, especially beginner artists, who, look, if you want to get in the business of selling art, making art to sell art, I would advise you against it. Because, again, well, why do you want to make art? Like, do something else for money. Like, get into crypto or do drop shipping or sell whatever skills you have, which is getting interestingly more challenging in the age of AI. But you make art because you love art. Right? Like if you don't love it, this is why one way to go about it is you keep your regular job, which could be in accounting or working at McDonald's or whatever, you know, and then you have your art to make you happy and you can, it's uncorrupted, as it were. Like when I was creating art for a living, it was very difficult at times because whenever money is involved, it's just very difficult at times because money is involved. And when someone's paying you to do something, they kind of own you in a certain way. Unless you are a insanely top caliber artist. But regardless, if someone's paying you, then you owe them something, right? And so money always has a way of corrupting something, a process, or especially when you allow someone to have creative say over your work. And if they are creative themselves and good at what they do, great. It always sucks when someone who's not creative is telling you how to be creative. Oh my God. So all that to say is create what you love and do it for you. And you think about how to monetize that later on. So the past few days I've been doing these drawings of a character with like an eye in their heart. What is that about? And their eyes are closed. So it looks like her eyes are open here, so it can go either way. But I'm gonna make her eyes closed just to be in the theme of the series. So I'll talk a little bit about series as it relates to maybe something that you can be known for. This gets into the artist's style, and so many artists are looking for their style, something they can be known for. It could be a character you create, or a particular look, or a theme. And you can do like 5 to 10 drawings of a theme or paintings, right? So I have maybe like 5 of these specifically that has the eye here. I think this is the 5th one. But I have like, I don't know, hundreds of other drawings of feminine characters facing forward, having some kind of Kundalini experience. You don't really have to be into this stuff to create it, right? I started creating very spiritual looking art before I really got into spirituality, in a sense, because I thought it looked cool. Like I was just creating lots of different art of different people having different experiences. And in 22, I started drawing faces with their eyes closed because it was a challenge for me to think, can I make something very expressive without the eyes? Because so much of my work was going into the eyes open and making the eyes colorful and bright and wild. And because I was doing it digitally, I was throwing in a lot of interesting elements in the eyes, like nebula and galaxies and things like that. So when you zoomed in, you really saw a whole other world, right? And then I thought, can I make something that's emotionally striking without the eyes? So that's when it started for me. It was like a self-challenge. And then I realized I can. And I created a whole series around it called Oceana, and it was all about these underwater goddesses with their eyes closed, and it was all digital, and they all had elements of like sea creatures and shit, right? Like jellyfish and coral patterns and things like that. And I had like an immersive art exhibit of that in Duluth, Minnesota. So you never know what's going to turn into a series. And so if any of you are looking for your art style, that's something to think about. Is a series of work. Multiple images of the same theme. So coming back to this, the eye of the heart. So I've been reading a lot of the Gnostic Gospels, as it were. These are the excluded writings of the Bible, you could say. And there's a lot of interesting stories and ideas about Jesus and his homies that are very different than what we have today in the current Bible. And some would call them heretical, meaning if they could, they would fucking burn you at the stake today, which they did back in the day. Like, people were willing to die for a lot of things they believed in. It's wild. Anyways, this whole idea of the eye of the heart was supposedly said by Jesus in one of these Gnostic Gospels. And I just found the phrase and idea very interesting, right? Sometimes it takes one line that you read that you're like, oh, I like that. Now I'm looking at this and I'm just feeling that I made the eye too big. So what do you do in this situation? You fucking erase it. Like, don't get too attached. It's just, there's something about it. I just feel it's too big. So I'm going to erase it. I'm going to erase it lightly because, again, this paper, I could tear off some of the paper. This is a kneaded eraser. It looks like a piece of clay, but kneaded, Kneaded, kneaded eraser. Get them very cheap at an art store or on Amazon. You can see I kind of just knocked it back a little bit. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to redraw it. So this is the beauty of creating art by hand, is that you get to work over your mistakes. There's no undos here, and I love digital work, and I still do digital work in Photoshop and Procreate and lots of different programs. But because of this whole AI thing, it's really gotten me to get back into drawing on paper again, which is great. It's a really lovely blessing in this kind of new world of artificial imagery. Anyone that calls themselves an AI artist, I guarantee you they do not know how to draw. They don't know how to paint. Maybe they tried and they're like, I suck, so I'm just going to take the easy way out. Okay, so I just drew this eye maybe like 5% smaller. But I had to erase what was there. Don't be afraid to erase your work. I think a problem with a lot of artists, including my past self, was that we get too attached. We put all this work into something, and then we get too attached, but we know it doesn't look right. It just doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right and it doesn't look right, it doesn't fucking look right. It's not going to, other people are going to notice, and you are going to regret not fixing it. So that's 5% smaller. I kind of like the vibe. Let me talk a little bit about design. I know I go a lot. I could rant about like so many different things. But let me talk about something practical for you guys listening. The design, right? What is design? At the end of the day, the simplest way to think about design is size variation, but not just size, color variation, line weight variation, any type of variation in the piece. But right now I'm talking about size variation. So specifically, look at the size of the head versus the size of this eye. They're different shapes, right? It might sound obvious, might look obvious, but it's intentional. Part of the reason I made the eye smaller, it was kind of converging a bit too close to maybe the size of the forehead. This can get very nuanced, this whole idea of varying the shapes of things. But this is going to be a very important thing if you are looking to create art, is the variance of things. Even look at this eyeball here. I have 3 different circles. I technically have 4 circles, all different sizes. This is that design principle in action. So how I came upon that principle was I was getting fired. I was in the slow process of getting fired from a job. Those are interesting scenarios where it's like you sense that you're going to get fucking fired, that people are not happy with your work. It's kind of dreadful because you're like, oh shit, when's it coming? And then I eventually did get let go, fired, same shit. I got let go from a design or a conceptual artist job, and I wasn't even getting paid for it. It was like for hopes of future pay. And sometimes you're going to find yourself in these situations where you're trying to prove yourself. Like I did this for years. Eventually it all paid off because I just stuck with it. But after I got fired, I talked to my friend who was also working on it. And he told me something that would forever change my life and change my art. And he said, dude, this guy was a professional artist. I really looked up to this guy, and he went to Art Center and spent like, I don't know, $100,000 on an Art Center education. If you don't know, Art Center is the premier art school in the US, one of them. And he said, dude, never make anything the same size as anything else. And that was it. And I was like, what the fuck is that? How's that supposed to help me? Like, how is that even an advice? I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it until, I don't know how long later. It could have been 6 months, could have been a year. I don't know. But I always thought, like, what the fuck did he mean? I know he was trying to tell me something because, again, he had learned this. He boiled down a 4-year, $100,000 education into one line. Never make anything the same size as anything else. And when it clicked for me a year later or 2 years later, whatever, I'm like, oh, I get what he was saying. And then I ran that line through every piece of art I ever created. And I never thanked him for that. I know I will one day. But now I tell that to you guys. So, okay, what does that mean here? Again, there is nothing that's exactly the same size. And remember, this is a rule that can be broken in the case of like the eyeballs, which we can't see them, her actual eyeballs. Those are the same size as either one, but we can't even see them here. Right? But they are generally the same size. But there's always going to be subtle variation. She's not a robot. And I'll make sure she doesn't look like a robot. Like, that's for the robots, that's for the AI people. Let them have their perfect, glossy, symmetrical things that were not created by any sort of talent except for the artists that they were stolen from. But anyways, I digress. AI is just built on theft. We all know this. Without consent. As if there's any other kind of theft. So, here's another example. The clavicles or collarbones. They're the same size, right, from this angle. But I can have subtle variation of maybe a tilt of one or another. But again, that's where I break the rule. I can have these clavicles appear the same size. But again, you have the deltoid, the shoulder muscle coming off of the clavicle, and then you have, see, I'm attempting to draw the anatomy underneath the muscle, the skeleton underneath the muscle, which is something I love to do. Again, it comes back to what lights you up. Draw more of that. I love anatomy. So you have the clavicle, and then you have this little piece of the shoulder blade, the scapula, that comes and reaches around and creates like another separate piece here. It's a very nuanced thing that happens. We all have this. I guarantee everyone watching has a clavicle, unless you're the kid from Stranger Things, which Dustin, I think, Toothless. I don't know if he had clavicles. He was able to do that arm trick in the show. I don't know how many Stranger Things fans are here, but if you're not Dustin, you probably have clavicles. And they're going to connect to the scapula. This is called the shoulder girdle. And so you have the deltoid, shoulder muscle attaches here. You have this gap right here. And then you have the pectoralis, the pecs, chest muscles. Male and female, whatever you want to call yourself, you have these things. And you probably have clavicles. So there's a lot of symmetry going on here. Hence breaking the rule of never make anything the same size as anything else. But I'm breaking the rule because, well, she's facing straight on purpose. So I get to break that rule. I get to break it here. But the sizes of everything else, right? The sizes of the pecs versus the deltoids. They're different sizes. The size of this eyeball here versus, here, I'll put another circle for her throat chakra. right here. And then maybe another circle at her third eye. 3 different circles, 3 different sizes. All that to say, if you just remember, never make anything the same size as anything else for your art, or even your home as an interior designer, right? The placement of furniture. This rule applies to all design. So that was the rant on design. So I'll make these characters kind of like floating, and so there's hair that's just blowing, right? There's a sense of, yeah, floating, lightness. Again, what lights you up? Whenever I see a bird flying, I'm like, fuck, I just want to do that. Imagine that freedom, right? And so that's what this art does for me. And it can do that for you too. It can give you a sense of something that you might be longing for. And you know, look, we know we're not going to be able to fly in this life, maybe. I'm not talking about planes. I'm not talking about skydiving. I'm talking about growing fucking wings and flying. Or you don't have to grow wings. Superman doesn't have wings. Why is Superman so popular? Well, not just because he could fly. Well, he's popular because he represents an ideal, right? The ideal goodness. Except when he's corrupted and he's a total asshole. You guys ever see Superman 2 when he... This was like old school. Like when I was a kid, Superman 2, Christopher Reeve, when he becomes corrupted and he becomes a bad guy. And he's just like this kind of gross, seedy, like, dude. Much like Homelander in The Boys, if you've ever seen that show. Homelander is such a scumbag. That's what Superman was like in Superman 2. He became the opposite of himself. And like we all have that in us. We all have this sense of the opposite. And then we have the power to choose, right? Or do we? Well, I just know I have free will because I decided to come on TikTok and draw this figure, and I'm using my knowledge of anatomy. This gets into the idea of art gives us a sense of control in a world that is out of control. And that also means there's parts within us that are out of control. Do you ever do things that you know you shouldn't be doing? There you go. Why do you do them? You know you shouldn't be doing them, and you do them anyway. You eat the things you know aren't good for you. You see the people you know aren't good for you. You do the things you know aren't good for you, and you do them anyway. What the fuck's going on there? So with your creativity, with your art, you can get a sense of control. You gotta acquire it. Again, I've been drawing stuff like this for years and years and years. Why? Because it lights me up. See how it all comes back? Like we get in these... You can create positive loops for yourself. But you got to be aware of what loops you're in. What makes you spiral? Do you ever get into a depressed state? We all do. This is normal. But it's how long you stay in it is going to determine your quality of life. So these different parts of us are at battle, right? So all that to say is learning an art, and it could be dance or music or anything like that, is going to give you something that you can control, and not in a controlling kind of way, right? Like I am controlling where this line goes. and I'm doing it lightly. And I apply that philosophy to life whenever I'm reminded that I'm holding on too fucking tight. We have to be able to let go, right? But we can control loosely, is what I'm saying. You can do that through art. You create coherence in your life. In an incoherent world, you can create mastery in your life. You can do all these things through creativity. But you got to put the time into it. All right, I know I've gone over 20 minutes. I'm usually doing these for 20 minutes. And for me, again, I'm doing this because I'm thinking about efficiency. And I talked about efficiency yesterday. I'm recording this video. I download the video. I make it into an Instagram story. I'm starting to upload these videos to YouTube Shorts. Because as much as I love TikTok, I'm not able to do lives on my new YouTube channel because I don't have enough shorts. So what I do is I do these videos, record them on TikTok, download them. I'll put the captions on in TikTok, right? Download them, upload them as shorts to YouTube. So why am I doing all this work? Well, look, if you want to get your work out there, for me, it's not so much getting the work out there, it's getting my teaching and message out there of what the arts can do for us in a healing and spiritual way, like all of these things I'm talking about. That's why I'm doing this. Because for years I would just do this, but I wouldn't record it. No one would see it. And if no one has seen your work, well, no one's seen your work. And then you might complain that no one's seen your work. And this is something a lot of artists get hung up on. They are afraid. Let's just admit it. It's fear that keeps you from showing your work. I'm not even talking about selling work. I'm talking about showing it. And you might say, well, I'm not as good as you, Alex. I'm like, well, neither was I back when I was starting out. And I got good because I practiced every day. Again, you just got to look at this is a form of discipline. That's a hard word for artists to hear. But again, if you love it and it lights you up, it's not going to feel like discipline. And sometimes it will. Sometimes you're like, I have to do this. And then I will remind you, you say, I get to do this. Get to do this. All right, so there's that. I'm just going to kind of go through some of the past drawings. Stay, Bob. Stay. Oh no, poor Bob. This was yesterday. This wasn't recorded. You can see here I'm drawing the anatomy first because I love anatomy, right? These are things I love to do. So I am communicating that love in these drawings. I believe this was yesterday. So again, the same theme, right? Feminine facing forward, having a spiritual experience, eyes closed. Her eyes are open. There's another eye of the heart. And again, so a lot of the same things. So what I'm getting at, repetition, intensity of the thing that you love to do. And I'll just do some final little highlights. So the paper I'm using, this is tone paper. You can get a tone paper sketchbook on Amazon. All this stuff is very inexpensive. I'm using a brown color pencil from Color Erase. It is not a standard colored pencil because you can't erase those. I want to be able to erase. So adding these lights is going to create a sense of contrast, which is going to tell the viewer, aka you guys, where to look more. Like we look at the things that are in most contrast. And so if I run this contrast primarily up through the center, I can have it go all these different places. This gets into lighting and things like that, which is something you want to know as someone who draws. I meet a lot of people who are like, I want to learn how to paint. I'm like, well, I don't teach painting unless you know how to draw. They're like, I don't want to know how to draw. I'm like, well, then I'm not your teacher then. Because you have to know certain fundamentals of drawing in order to paint. And some might argue against that, and that's fine. That's just not my method of teaching, because I'm teaching a more holistic approach to creating art. Not even just technique, it's the entire human being, right? And I go as far as teaching health and wellness, like diet, exercise, right? Because our human machine is the culmination of all those things, and then the art is the absolute culmination of all that. Now, I know people that they're quadriplegic, they can't walk, and they make art, and that's fucking beautiful. Like, I love that people can use art and creativity in whatever physical state they're in. But what I'm doing that's different is bringing in all of these other modalities to create, well, an infinite artist, and what that means, right? It is a holistic approach, the entire human. And then the expression of that human is the creativity. I'm not saying you got to be jacked in order to make great art, but I'm saying you can. And you'll be healthier. And these stats, these are true stats. Healthier people make more art because they're more feeling good. They're feeling better about their lives. I'm not talking about people getting jacked and all that. I'm talking about just taking responsibility for your health and then taking responsibility for your creativity, right? So that's the kind of audience that I'm speaking to. Sometimes people, they don't even know that they don't even know that fixing their health is going to fix their creativity, but it sounds obvious, doesn't it? Once you really think about it. And creativity is a great way to, reverse engineer. Like, you can create art based off of your tumultuous, psychological state, which I have too. This is where shadow work art comes in. Movement and art, getting large canvases, doing body painting, doing full range of motion artwork. You're already moving. You might as well stick a paintbrush in your hand and have some kind of artifact when you're done. This is the missing pillar of health, I'm telling you. If any of you are interested in teaching art, that is a great thing to get into. And you don't even have to be a great artist. I mean, it helps. But you can learn about health and wellness and then apply creativity to it. This is the missing pillar. So sleep, diet, exercise, nutrition, and art, the missing pillar in health. I fucking guarantee you this is it. And the data backs it up. All right, guys, this was fun. Much love to y'all. I'll be back probably tomorrow because repetition and intensity gets us to where we want to go. And where I want to go is more recording of these videos. All right. Love you guys.